dark and stormy night, our first poetry night of 2023. Yay! We've got a whole year of poetry ahead of us, but we'll just go ahead and get started. Beth Bonness is here from Portland, and
I'm glad I safely made it.
yes, thank you for
It was a long
braving. I know, it's a drive.
It was a long drive.
We appreciate you.
Yes. Well, great.
Thanks, and we'll go ahead and get started.
Thank you. My name is Beth Bonness, and like probably all of you, started writing poetry in high school. You know, probably. And I didn't really go and submit it anywhere until after I'd retired in my mid-50s. And then COVID hit, was doing more writing, poetry, working on a novel. Poetry was a good, go work on poetry because it was faster turnaround. And there was a contest, a chapbook contest that the Poetry Box put out there in Portland. And I thought, wow, chapbook, I'm just struggling to get one poem, individual poem submitted. I thought someday it'd be great to do a chapbook. But what was unusual about the contest is that it was a chapbook of the poet's choice. Usually they've got some theme that you've got to have, go and pick your poems to fit into. In this case, it wasn't. So I thought, okay, go look through all those poems you've been writing for decades. You can find enough to do 44 pages, I think it was, And so I did, and in the process, it was like 24 hours notice, or 2 days I gave myself. And it's like, that's not very much time, but just go for it. What do you have to lose? So I became one of the finalists, and then my chapbook was, my debut chapbook was accepted, so I did this. I'm going to be reading from here. And the chapbook, the poems I ended up pulling up were a bunch of poems from the times I had a series of strokes back in 2007. And it took about 2.5 weeks for them to figure out what was going on. And I was working in corporate, didn't want to talk about it, was pretty much in denial. It's like something happened, got over it, get on with your life. And so I submit this chapbook, and it's about my strokes. And it's kind of like, well, now you're going to have to talk about them because you're going to be doing readings, like I'm doing readings here. So the Transition Thunderstorms is the title of it. And that came from, I grew up in Wisconsin, and I miss the thunderstorms. We have a lot of rain out here, but thunderstorms are rare. I mean, those good thunder boomers. Not as bad as the tornadoes that hit Atlanta or around Georgia today, but just good thunderstorms. And with what was happening in my brain at the time with all the strokes, there's like thunderstorms in my brain. So in looking at the poems that I picked, it just seemed like a perfect title for it. So before I read the first one, I want you to think about a time you had a hard time getting your words out. Could have been where you were really angry, and so you were doing, no, don't say that, or I want to say that, but I shouldn't say that. Or you were just nervous, and so you were afraid you were going to say the wrong thing. That'll set the stage for what it was like for much of the time that I had the strokes and during the recovery. So this first one that I'm going to read is called Wrong Word Dinner. Robe of white wrapped around my recovering body. My husband and daughter's dinner table chatter surrounds me. Leftovers warm in the microwave. Everyone's smiling. Today's been a better day. Blood pressure's holding. Read a bit of a book. Sleep's been okay. Longer concentration than yesterday. I journaled with less frustration, yet my O's and E's and A's still collapse, deflated helium balloons in my cursive. The girls chatter on about their day, peppered with questions from Dad, my private ping pong game to keep up with their conversation. I lean in for a question, my lips part. By the time a thought is firm, the girls are off to their next topic. My lips close, forced smile intact. No reason to let them know I'm having trouble keeping up, though they sense it. When they ask me a question, their pace slows. Beep! My husband's chair scrapes and squeals on the floor. As he starts to rise, I pop up before he does, wrapping my white robe sash tighter. The microwave door swings open. Words in my head stand in line, ready for their turn, only they get all mixed up when they come out, like someone at camp stopping abruptly, an entire line of words falling over each other. Middle daughter points to an apple. I say orange. The word apple mute at the back of my brain. In the shadows, her buddy Orange answers on Apple's behalf. My youngest daughter points to her water glass. I say chair. My smile collapses, joined by their smiles weakening. Not again. No evil snowflakes in my peripheral vision, this time. No hand claw, only wrong words. Hunger disappears, adrenaline fills my body. Tears well up. I don't want the girls to see me like this. Stop talking, then you won't say the wrong thing. I slip away into the living room, lights off. Laughter from moments earlier disintegrates into murmurs. Too much excitement. Stay still for a bit. Doctor's orders, meds and rest. The house is quiet, meds and rest. Tears fall into my white robe, invisible. I don't stop them until I hear footsteps. My youngest crouches down, her hands on my knees, voice gentle. Mama, you know you have to go back to the hospital, right? Her 15-year eyes searching for recognition in my almost 50-year ones. When did our roles reverse? I shake my head yes. Upstairs to change, with all my wrong words mashing around in my head, unable to get out in the right order. That was probably the second time. I went to the hospital 5 times over 2 weeks. I actually had a frequent flyer. I joked because the 4th time they let me go and I was back within 24 hours and I said, do I get, a status? Because I've been here, like less than 24 hours. And the first time I had a TIA, a transitory ischemic attack, which is a warning stroke. It's like you've been warned. I was having my hair done. I'd rushed from corporate. It's like I kept putting the hair, it's like I needed to get it dyed. Holidays were coming up and I wanted to get the hair dyed. And so it was, at the end of the day, it was just my hairdresser and I. And my husband and 2 of our 3 daughters were at the pub around the corner. And so I was going to meet them after I had my hair done. So I'm sitting in the chair, so I don't know how my balance would have been because I was not standing up. And I'm watching myself. And I'm telling this funny story. I will admit that I had, when you get timed, the dye stays on for a while and then she comes back, that I admit I was looking at work emails. And it was the standard Q4, all hands on deck, revenue needs to, happen, do everything you can to help sales. And I was a liaison to operations and doing the deals with NBC and all. I mean, it was a stressful time. I admit it was a stressful time. So I read that email and I thought, it's after dinner. I'm going to answer it tomorrow. So I tried to, put it away and was telling Mary a funny story. And I'm telling her the story, and all of a sudden, it was almost like I was underwater. I see her in my peripheral vision. I'm like watching myself tell the story. I see her in the peripheral vision, and she's just going, Beth, are you okay? And I'm thinking, shut up, I'm telling you the story. Can't you hear I'm telling the story? And then I look and I realize the words and the story in my head are not coming out my lips. And then I'm like, wow, this is really weird. So I wasn't scared. Stroke was not in my vocabulary. I was 49. And so then it was clear she couldn't hear me, and I wasn't talking. So I went to reach for a pen in my purse, and my hand was a claw. And then I was like, oh, okay, this isn't good. So she's going, should I call 911? And all I was doing was like, I don't want to go to 911. I don't have time to go to the hospital. And so maybe 2 or 3 minutes, maybe 4, it stopped. And so I said, just finish my hair. Jeff's around the corner. It's okay. So she did, walked around the corner. He had ordered French onion soup or whatever it was I was going to have, ate it. And then he goes, well, you take Amanda and I'll take Rachel. So I drove one of my kids home. It was only like 5 minutes, but still. And so when we got home, they went upstairs, and I said, I got to tell you something. And then he's just freaking out. So we're on the phone with Kaiser, and they're like, get over here right away. Don't tell, don't drive. It's like, well, I won't drive anymore. I mean, I did drive. And I remember being there, and I'm all dressed up. I've got high heels and my, silk suit on from work. And there is the nurse's name was Billy, and I'll never forget him. You're on the exam table, and they're on those little stools, that kind of roll around. And my blood pressure was 215 over 125. I mean, I've had blood pressure spike up when I've been pregnant, or it's been maybe 150 where it spikes when you go, but nothing like that. And he goes, are you on? I'm only laughing because I'm okay. He goes, are you on any blood pressure medication? And I said, no, I'm doing yoga and meditation and biofeedback. And he does not miss a beat. And because he's doing whatever he is, and he goes, how's that working for you? And then he said, are you adverse to medication? And I said, well, I'm not an idiot looking at the blood pressure, although I was adverse to medication, which is why I was doing all the other stuff. And so they put me on that, didn't do an MRI, did a bunch of, EKGs and whatnot, and basically said, take time off of work and rest. So did that, and then ended up being on this roller coaster of then shopping for Thanksgiving at Safeway. I started seeing the evil snowflakes again, and so it's back to the hospital. And they thought it was migraines, or thought it was MS, they had no idea what it was, so they kept telling me to rest and just kept giving me, it's like your cholesterol's a little bit high, so we'll give you some cholesterol, and we'll give you some other blood pressure medication. And so did that. The spine of this book is a really long poem about the morning I was in the hospital, Thanksgiving morning, and it was too long to have for one, so what I did is I chopped it up into 8 different pieces and then interspersed it with other poems, which with the stroke and the fragmentation that kind of goes on, poetry really was a perfect container for kind of capturing what was happening with my brain. So what I'd like to read next is one of the first one of the Thanksgiving with a side of no thank you. So this is Thanksgiving morning in the hospital by myself. My husband had gone home for a well-deserved night to sleep. My arm won't move. I can't feel my left arm. No, I feel it. I feel tingles, like the ones you have when your arm falls asleep, then wakes up with little nibbling minnows screaming, their sharp teeth under your skin. Although the screaming is silent, but you feel it swell from inside your arm. Is my left hand a claw? Or only stiff from circulation being cut off to my arm because I slept on it too long overnight? There aren't any evil snowflakes in my peripheral vision. I wish the damn beeping telemetry machine would shut up. Take a break. I'd still be here when you get back. That's number 1. And then I have other poems in there, but I want to stick with the stroke because I'm doing that theme. Then I'll shift off of it to other stuff. So this is Thanksgiving with a side of no thank you, number 2. I'm wearing one of those washed too many times, paper-thin, ugly greenish-blue hospital gowns with preschool geometric patterns that you find in airport carpets created by somebody who flunked design school. Predictable and boring as muzak in elevators that makes you want to take the stairs versus listen. So you try to blot out the sound with your thoughts, relegating it to white noise. You'd prefer to be silent. Why aren't I wearing my pajamas in the hospital? You don't wear pajamas. I'd prefer one of Jeff's shirts, anything but this wrapping paper screaming, sick person, sick person. It got to the point when we'd go to the hospital that my husband would say, this floor, this room, she needs blankets, because he was my interpreter because the words weren't coming out. And every time you go to the doctor, you have to repeat everything over and over, even though they've got it all in the records. So he got very good at doing that, which I'm very grateful for. Here's another poem, and this, in speaking of transitions, The stroke was a transition, kind of life before the stroke and life after the stroke. And other events that kind of that was the other thing. The thunderstorm theme, when we were kids, you'd go out in the summer and we'd come back in and Mom would say, "Did you get soaked to the bone?" Just because you'd be warm, but you got soaked to the bone. And so I talk about these poems as, emotionally kind of soaking into the bone. So this one is about the night she died. This is my little sister who was 3. I peer through the upstairs railing, our front door open. Mom stands in her white puffy robe in the middle of the night. Dad is next to her, his back to me. He holds my little sister's body, her 3-year-old head nestled in his left elbow, a lace bonnet with blonde curls scotch-taped inside, her legs to his right, still. In the driveway, a police car idles, lights off. An officer escorts my father, clutching her tiny frame toward the car. Dad slips in the back seat, cradling my sister, adjusting her bonnet. The squad door closes. We watch them driving away, Mom and I. She closes the front door, cutting off cold air, replacing the warmth of my little sister. I was 10 when Meg died. I was the eldest of 6 girls. We still say there are 6 daughters, even though Meg isn't alive anymore. Now I'm going to do another stroke, and then I'll go do some happy wedding one. So, am I do this one? No, I'm going to do this one. Okay. Thanksgiving with a side of no thank you, number 6. Now, I wish the doctors would figure out what's causing the attacks. First, silent sparkles, white sparkles, off to my left side. Painless pressure pulses behind my eyeballs. Then the words, or lack of words. My inside voice works fine. But when the main gatekeeper lets words out, she must be new and didn't go through enough training, because she lets whomever rushes to the front of the line get out first, regardless of my attempting to control the word toddlers jockeying for position and falling over each other as they tumble out. Better keep unpredictable words inside, otherwise people might think you're crazy. I remember when I went back to work, I talked very fast. I was in marketing. We do brainstorm meetings in the conference center, and when I'd go back to that and my words were still not matching or timely, it was really hard to sit in those meetings. And after the first couple of times it was clear I wanted to say something, having 20 people look at me, it was like the pressure of, am I going to say the right thing? Is garble going to come out? So I just stopped talking and would follow up with an email, which was so not like me, but I really didn't want people knowing it was like none of their business, but I didn't want people knowing that I was less than. And it took 3 years, but I finally did get off the medication through a lot of exercise, a lot of spreadsheets, tracking, my food and stress and BP and weight and all of that. So I made me a project, which is what it took to do that. But my compassion for people who, whether they've had a stroke or a brain injury or not, little kids not being able to get the right words out, it's like, I hear ya. And being frustrated, or somebody at the airport who doesn't speak the language and they're trying to communicate and they can't get the frustration. I can feel it. I mean, it's instant. I'm back in the hospital or back trying to say chair and I say apple. It was very humbling, and I'm very grateful that I was able to, get mostly back. I mean, there still are artifacts, but you don't know me, so you don't know what those artifacts are. So. This next one I'm going to read is about the day we got married. My husband and I got married. We were high school sweethearts and got married right out of college. So we've been married for 40 plus years. So this is called Wedding Thunderstorms. Smiling at me from high above an Oregon beach, clouds waft past, dripping their mist onto the waves. Rainbow bubble reflections float on the wind, past the windows, while drinking champagne and eating M&Ms lined up by color. My personal guilty pleasure. Where did all the brown ones go? There used to be more. Now blue, my favorite color, seems to be the queen. Popping them in 2 at a time, 1 for each cheek, sucking them until the chocolate shell melts. Can't wait that long. Crunch and chew. The chocolate of my childhood, along with Toll House cookies. 216 for my husband, then boyfriend's 18th birthday. 1,500 for our wedding, overlooking Madison's Lake Mendota, wearing a one-size-fits-all wedding dress my husband, then fiancé, found on the cover of Cosmopolitan magazine while waiting in line at the grocery store months before we wed. On the day, a private moment before hundreds of guests, under a beautiful blue sky, after morning thunderstorms, threatened to roll in again, I swam in the aquamarine lake, reflecting the sky, bewildering the women watching from their hotel rooms beneath a sky riddled with thunderstorms, as it should be for a wedding. Thank you. How are we on time? So the last poem I'd like to read was the first poem I got published. And the funny story with this one is that in corporate, I worked for Grass Valley, Tektronix, which is one of the Tektronix, so for people who are from Portland know that. And theoretically, I worked for Tektronix, and all the companies after that were companies that were sold and bought by somebody else, but it was from the original Tektronix. And one of those was in the early 2000s when digital cinema was coming out. And so I was down in Burbank, and it's hard not to get the bug to write a screenplay when you're in Burbank and you're at the airport and it's how to write a screenplay in 35 days or whatever it is. So I had the secret screenplay that I was working on. So when I was in corporate, it's like, okay, at some point I'm going to write the screenplay, I'm going to get optioned, and then I'm going to treat myself and get my nose pierced. And then that was my big treat, right? And so when I retired, after the stroke, there's a lot of quiet time, and so there was reflection about, yes, you've got to reduce the stress, yes, you've got to have a healthier lifestyle, all of that. But part of that was I needed to spend more creative time writing. Didn't matter if it went anywhere, but I just needed to do the writing. And so when I retired, and I thought, if you want to get your nose pierced, just go get your nose pierced. And so I did, and then I wrote a poem about it, and then I got published. So I got published, and I got my nose pierced, but it wasn't in the order I thought it was going to be. So I'm going to read my nose piercing one, if I can find it. Nose piercing. Fingers shake ever so slightly beneath a cupped hand resting on my lap. Smile thoughts forced over a cliff by inside cheering hooligans, ready for initiation of a lifetime undercover member exposed. It's time. Inked Brooklyn expat, disarming chatter, a purposeful distraction, welcomed. Point by point, prelude. Deep, nervous, inhale, exhale, quick crunch through cartilage, tears stream, a delayed jolt of energy, of adrenaline. Arm-crossed hooligans watching, high-five each other. Nostril twitches, and a tiny diamond sparkles. So, there. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth.